Yggdrasil, The World Tree and the Shape of Norse Myth, Part 1, The Tree at the Center. Before there is a map, there is a tree, not a flat chart of 9 neat kingdoms, not a diagram with clean borders and arrows, not the fantasy poster that modern readers often imagine when they hear the phrase, the 9 worlds. In the older Norse poetic imagination, the cosmos is not first explained as a page. It is felt as a living thing, rooted, branching, drinking, suffering, sheltering, and shaking. That living center is Yggdrasil. The name belongs to one of the most haunting images in Norse myth, an immense ash tree whose roots reach into hidden wells, whose branches rise through the heavens, and whose body connects gods, humans, giants, the dead, and the powers that stand outside ordinary life. Around it gather the Norns, the beings associated with fate. Beneath it move serpents, in it perch birds. Across it runs the busy messenger squirrel, Ratatoskr. At its roots, memory and destiny are not abstract ideas. They are waters, wounds, and daily labor. But to approach Yggdrasil carefully, we need to begin with a warning. We do not possess a single ancient Norse textbook called the True Map of the Universe. We do not have a Viking Age wall chart showing exactly where each world sat. What survives is more fragile and more interesting. Medieval Icelandic poetry and prose, written down after the conversion to Christianity, preserving older mythic material in forms shaped by memory, scholarship, politics, and literary art. The two great source bodies are usually called the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. The Poetic Edda is a collection of mythological and heroic poems preserved in medieval manuscripts, especially from the 13th century, though many of the poems point back toward older oral traditions. The Prose Edda is associated with Snorri Sturluson, an Icelandic poet, historian, and political figure writing in the early 13th century. Snorri was not simply recording pagan religion from inside an unbroken pre-Christian world. He was explaining old poetic language, organizing myths, and making them usable for poets who needed to understand ancient kennings and stories. So when we speak of Yggdrasil, we are listening through layers. There is old mythic poetry, there is medieval preservation, there is Snorri's ordering mind. There are later artists and antiquarians who gave the tree a visual form that many people now treat as ancient. The careful path is not to flatten those layers, it is to walk among them slowly. In Völuspá, the seeress speaks of the beginning and end of the world. In Grímnismál, Odin, disguised and tormented, reveals deep knowledge of cosmic order. In Hávamál, a voice associated with Odin remembers hanging on a windswept tree for 9 nights, wounded by a spear, sacrificing himself to himself in search of runic wisdom. Snorri's Gylfaginning gathers and arranges much of this material into a prose account of gods, worlds, wells, and the great ash. From these sources, Yggdrasil becomes more than scenery. It is the shape of existence. One root reaches toward the gods, one reaches toward the frost giants, one reaches toward the realm of the dead. Near the roots are wells, places of depth, memory, judgment, and hidden knowledge. The well of Urdur is especially important, associated with the Norns, whose names are often rendered as Urdur, Verandi, and Skuld. What has become, what is becoming, and what may be owed or shall be. They are not simply fortune tellers, they are figures of necessity, weaving or carving or determining the conditions under which life unfolds. Each day, in Snorri's account, the Norns take water and clay from the well and pour it over the ash so that its branches do not wither. This is a quiet detail, and it changes everything. The world tree is not an immortal machine, it has to be tended. The cosmos survives through care. Part 2, Roots, Wells, and Wounds. Modern retellings often describe Yggdrasil as if it were a stable architectural structure, a pillar holding floors in place. But the sources make it stranger and more vulnerable. The tree is magnificent, yes, but it is also under pressure. At the top, an eagle sits among the branches. Between the eagle's eyes, in some accounts, rests a hawk. On the trunk, Ratatoska runs up and down, carrying words between the eagle above and Nidhogga below. The image can feel almost comic, a squirrel as messenger of insults in a cosmic tree, yet even that restless motion matters. Yggdrasil is not silent. Information, hostility, rumor, and tension move through it. 4 stags browse among the branches, serpents gather below. Nidhogga gnaws at the roots. In Grímnismál, the tree suffers more than people know. It is eaten from above, decayed at the side, and bitten from beneath. The center of the world is alive, but life does not mean peace, it means endurance. This is one of the reasons Yggdrasil is such a powerful companion to the myth of Ragnarök. In many modern apocalyptic stories, the end of the world arrives from outside, like an invasion or a sudden catastrophe. In Norse myth, the end is also something that has been growing within the structure all along. Bonds loosen, wolves break free, the dead move, fire comes, the gods go to their appointed battles, the sun is swallowed, the earth sinks, the tree trembles. Yet trembling is not the same as disappearance. The world tree participates in doom, but also in continuity. After the destruction, the sources speak of renewal, a green earth rising again from the sea, surviving gods returning, human life continuing through hidden survivors. The details vary by source and interpretation, and the Christian-era manuscript context always requires caution. Still, the movement is unmistakable. Norse myth does not give us a simple straight line from creation to annihilation. It gives us a cosmos where endings and beginnings are entangled. The wells beneath Yggdrasil help explain why. A well is not a map point, it is depth, it is storage, it is memory drawn upward. In Norse mythic language, knowledge is rarely free. Odin gives an eye for a drink from Mimir's well. He hangs on the tree for runes. Wisdom is not a decoration added to power, it is bought through loss. That brings us to the most famous and most difficult Yggdrasil story, Odin's hanging. In Hávamál, the speaker says he knows that he hung on a windy tree for 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, himself to himself, on a tree whose roots no one knows. He looked downward, took up the runes, and fell from the tree. This passage has generated centuries of interpretation. Some connect it directly and confidently to Yggdrasil. Some emphasize ritual initiation. Some compare it cautiously with shamanic ordeals or sacrificial kingship. Some later Christian readers noticed echoes that may or may not be part of how medieval audiences heard the poem. For this episode, the safest language is also the strongest. The poem presents knowledge as ordeal. Odin, the god who seeks wisdom obsessively, does not receive the runes by command. He undergoes exposure, pain, suspension, and self-offering. The tree is not only a cosmic structure, it is a place where the hunger for knowledge becomes bodily. This matters because Yggdrasil gathers opposites. It is rooted and moving. It is sacred and wounded. It connects worlds but also carries conflict between them. It is tended by fate and attacked by decay. It is the center but not a safe center. Part 3. The Worlds Without a Modern Map. The phrase 9 worlds is familiar, but it can mislead us. Modern diagrams often place Asgard above, Midgard in the middle, Hell below, and other realms in tidy positions around a vertical tree. These diagrams can be useful teaching tools, but they are not surviving ancient blueprints. The sources mention places and peoples, gods, humans, giants, elves, dwarfs, the dead, fire, ice, and other zones of mythic meaning. Snorri organizes much of this material, and later readers organize it further. A careful documentary approach should say Norse tradition imagines a structured cosmos, and Yggdrasil is central to that structure, but the exact map was not preserved as a single stable chart. This is not a weakness, it is part of the poetry. Think of the difference between a subway map and a forest. A subway map tells you where to transfer. A forest tells you that paths are walked, remembered, feared, and changed by weather. Yggdrasil is closer to the forest. It is a way of imagining relationship, not merely location. Asgard, the world of the Asai gods, is not just up. Midgard, the human enclosure, is not just middle. Jotunheimr, the realm associated with giants or Yetnar, is not just outside. These are mythic positions, order and danger, kinship and hostility, civilization and wilderness, memory and threat. The tree holds these tensions together without dissolving them. That is why Yggdrasil is not only a Norse version of a global tree of life symbol, even though cosmic trees appear in many cultures. Comparative mythology can be illuminating, but it can also blur the local shape of a tradition. In the Norse sources, this tree belongs to a world of oaths, doom, ancestral memory, poetic knowledge, and gods who are powerful but not eternal. It is not a generic symbol of harmony. It is a living axis in a tragic cosmos. The medieval manuscripts also remind us that survival is selective. Much of pre-Christian Scandinavian religion was never written down. Much was practiced, sung, carved, remembered, and lost. The Eddas preserve a great deal, but they do not preserve everything. Snorri sometimes explains a myth in ways that make it coherent for his readers, but that coherence may conceal older variations. The Poetic Edda gives us flashes, dense, dramatic, elusive, sometimes contradictory. The world tree emerges from those flashes like a form seen through mist. In later art, Yggdrasil becomes more visible. 19th century illustrators draw it with roots like architecture and branches like a cathedral. Public domain images from Romantic and antiquarian books have deeply shaped the way modern audiences picture the tree. Odin hanging, Norns at the root, serpents below, animals arranged almost like emblems. These images are beautiful and useful, but they belong to the afterlife of the myth. They are not windows straight into the Viking Age. So the best visual language for Yggdrasil may be atmospheric rather than diagrammatic. Bark, roots, water, snow, ravens, manuscripts, stars through branches, a well in darkness, a green shoot after fire. Not a false map, a mood of connection. Part 4. Fate, Care, and the Trembling Tree. At the heart of Yggdrasil is a question. What kind of cosmos did the Norse myths imagine? Not a universe ruled by all-powerful gods beyond danger. The gods themselves are inside the structure. They ride to assemblies, they seek counsel, they know fragments of fate. Odin, greatest seeker of wisdom, cannot simply abolish Ragnarök. Thor, strongest of the gods, cannot make the world immune to poison. Freyr, Tyr, Heimdall, Loki, the wolf, the serpent, the fire giant, all move toward a crisis that is foretold but not made painless by being known. Yggdrasil gives that tragic knowledge a shape. If the tree is the cosmos, then fate is not a distant decree. Fate is in the roots. It is in the water drawn daily. It is in the damage that accumulates. It is in the creatures that feed, carry, gnaw, watch, and wait. The Norns tending the tree are especially important. Their care is not sentimental. They do not make the world harmless. They preserve the tree in a world where harm is constant. That may be one reason the image endures. It understands that existence requires maintenance. The sacred is not exempt from erosion. There is a quiet ecological resonance here, though we should not force the old sources into modern categories. Yggdrasil is not an environmental manifesto, but it is a mythic image in which the condition of the world is tied to the condition of a tree. The health of roots, water, and branches is not decorative, it is cosmological. The image also has literary power. A tree can hold time. Its rings remember seasons, its roots remember soil, its branches host generations of birds. It can be older than any person who stands beneath it, yet still vulnerable to drought, axe, rot, and fire. To imagine the universe as a tree is to imagine time as growth and wounding together. That is why Yggdrasil is different from a throne. A throne suggests command, a tree suggests dependence. Even gods gather under it, even Odin must hang from it, even fate must water it. When Ragnarök approaches, the tree trembles. The trembling matters. It means the center feels what happens at the edges. The crisis of gods and monsters is not separate from the roots. Nothing in this cosmos is truly isolated, and after the catastrophe, life is imagined again. The details are not a simple promise that everything returns unchanged. The old order is broken. Many gods are gone. The world is altered. But the mythic imagination leaves room for green earth, returning memory, and human continuation. If Yggdrasil is the shape of the old cosmos, then its story teaches that continuity is not the same as invulnerability. Something can survive and still be transformed. Part 5. What the tree leaves us. So what is Yggdrasil? It is a mythic ash tree attested in medieval Norse sources. It is the axis of a cosmos whose exact geography cannot be reduced to one modern poster. It is a meeting place of wells, roots, gods, giants, the dead, animals, messages, wounds, and fate. It is the tree on or near which Odin's search for runic knowledge becomes an ordeal of sacrifice. It is a living center that must be watered because even the sacred can wither, and it is one of the great images of mythic thought, the world as something alive enough to suffer. If Atlantis asks why people turn stories into lost history, and Troy asks how poetry and archaeology can overlap, Yggdrasil asks a quieter question: how did a people imagine the shape of everything? Not in equations, not in satellite views, but in the language of roots and branches, wells and wounds, doom and renewal. The answer that survives is not complete. It is medieval, layered, partial, and sometimes difficult. But perhaps that is fitting. A tree is never seen all at once. Stand beneath it and you see bark. Look upward and you see branches dividing into sky. Dig below and you find roots going where you cannot follow. The old poems do not hand us a clean diagram. They hand us an image strong enough to keep thinking with. A tree whose roots no one fully knows, a tree that suffers more than men know, a tree watered by fate, a tree that trembles when the world is ending, and somewhere, after ruin, the possibility of green life again.